everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are, and welcome to Rethinking WTE Investments Economic Considerations for Policymakers. I'm Brex Arevalo from Gaia Asia Pacific. I will be moderating this event today. And once again, we'd like to welcome you to this webinar where we have a fabulous panel of 6 amazing speakers. All of these speakers are heavily involved in waste-to-energy fights across Asia Pacific, from Indonesia, South Korea, Philippines, India, New Zealand, and Bangladesh. We'll be going through a 1.5 to 2 hour program today with our first panel consisting of the first 3 speakers. From Indonesia, we have Mr. Donny Julius Christian, researcher at WALHI, one of the largest and oldest environmental NGO in Indonesia. In South Korea, we have Mr. Seungbae, former Chief Policy Officer of the Mapo-gu district, who has been closely involved in the WTE fight against a proposal there in the district of Mapo-gu, which is within the city of Seoul. And in the Philippines, we have Ms. Buena Victoria Tenafrancia, founder of Zero Waste Baguio, which has been at the forefront of promoting zero waste initiatives in Baguio City, and also in rejecting the WTE proposal for the city, which in July last year was announced to be abandoned by the mayor during a forum. We'll begin our first panel with Mr. Donny Julius Christian. And Donny, while he recently published a research on WTE case studies in 4 cities in Indonesia, we'd like to know in your study, how have local governments rejected these proposals? And what are the different business cases that you highlight in your study as to why these do not work in the 4 Indonesian case studies in your research? Donny, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brex. So good. It's noon in Indonesia, so hello everyone. Before jumping in, I will also present my slides. Wait, or maybe can I get the help to be presented? Oh, okay, there it is. Okay. So I'll get to the conclusion why finally the government, I will not say abandon, but like put it on a parking spot because it's not revoked yet in terms of policy sense. So we have 3 cases, at least in Indonesia, so in Jakarta, Surakarta, and also Bandung. And we'll jump straight into Jakarta. Next slide, please. So this is just mapping out how does the relationship actually work in Jakarta case context. Jakarta plan to have 4 waste-to-energy facilities, and this is the first one, ITF Sunter we call it. It's planned to be 2,200 tons per day capacity, and it was introduced back in 2016. Long story short, there are 4 blockers actually, but the 4th one is actually the accumulation from the first 3. The first one being the problem with the tipping fee. So the expected tipping fee for the ITF Sunter is 600,000 rupiah per ton. This is a very heavy one, and the JVCO, the joint company from the strategic partner, and also Jakpro, the company that got the mandate, they expect a 25 years of commitment, which the local government see it as a very binding thing, and it's a heavy commitment to agree with, especially with the 600,000 rupiah per ton, which translates to around 480 billion rupiah per year, and it goes for the next 25 years. And then the second problem is on the electricity sales. The JVCO, they want the take or pay. So it means that no matter how much the electric company take, they still have to pay the minimum floor amount. While the electricity company, they want to take and pay. So they only want to pay for what they are taking. This is pure business sense. And it become a deadlock. And finally, the electricity agreement cannot take place. And then on the third one, it's Jakpro, the parent company. Actually, their health, the financial health side is not good. So in 2020 until 2023, based on the publicly available data, they are not performing well in terms of cash flow. So it creates, they always have a loss for every year. All these three problems, they combine. And then when it comes to the loan proposal, which is the method that is being picked by the JVCO to fund the project, the international lenders are reluctant because simply the parent company do not have the good financial health. And I think the most important thing is that there is no clear business model here. They cannot secure the tipping fee, and they also cannot secure the electricity sales. So that is why the ETF Sunter up until now is still just a title, nothing really tangible. After the groundbreaking, nothing really happened. And you can see in the bottom, there is a very simple revenue and expense stream. Basically, theoretically, there should be a positive cash flow. But I think what also needs to be mentioned here is that the electricity sales, it will go up and down, especially if it takes the take and pay method. And then also the target price, which is at 13.35 cent US dollar per kilowatt hour in Indonesia, it might change because we also have a new policy which stipulated that for biomass, which is the closest type of power plant in Indonesia, is charged at 9.87. So it already reduced the potential revenue. And then from the tipping fee side, again, the commitment is not there. So it creates a reluctancy. So what I'm trying to say, this 874 is very likely to go down. And then if we see the expense side, while the revenue goes down, the expense most likely will go up. Because when we are talking about operational expenditure, as the facility ages, the cost to maintain it most likely will also increase. So we are seeing also the OPEX that might increase over time. Why I'm saying this? Because all this simple model is created based on a flat assumption. So it assumes that nothing will change. But in reality, when we are talking about technology, it always move around because aging, changes of technology, and so on and so forth. So this is just a map on how is the situation in Jakarta, and then we can go to the next slide. I want to laser in on the blocker number 1, the thing about tipping fee. This is just to paint the picture. The UPST DLH, the governing body in Jakarta that is responsible for waste management, they have the budget on number 2 and number 3, bullet 1. They have the budget of 1.84 trillion and 1.19 trillion. That is in 2019 and 2025. This translates to around 25 to 40% of the UPST budget. Which means because ETF Center is not the only, it's not going to be the only WTE facility in Jakarta, UPST will have to spend all their budget on paying the tipping fee. So it doesn't make sense at all. There's no way it makes sense. For comparison's sake, which is the current model, sending it to landfill in Bantar Gebang, it only costs them a quarter of it or a sixth of it. Depends on which sources of information. What I'm trying to point out here is that ETF Center and WTE in Jakarta in general, it stretches the UPST DLH budget in a status quo sense when we compare it to Bantar Gebang, and also in budget spread sense, in the sense of how many funding that UPST DLH have. Why I'm saying this is impossible, we also need to note that UPST, they are not only handling the processing, but also the collection side and also the upstream side. Next one. Okay, this one I will be very quick. Just trying to paint the picture here that Jakpro is running on a very unhealthy cash flow. So long story short, on the orange line, they are run on a negative cash flow, and it becomes more severe over time. So in this sense, they will have a very difficult time to convince the funder that they are a competent loanee. We go to the next case, which is in Surakarta. Yeah, next slide. So this one is Surakarta. I'm just going to run through the simple EBITDA analysis. I'm going to point 1 directly. So this is the total electricity sales during operation lifetime. It assumes that there should be around 2 trillion of revenue. But what is also important here to mention is that this is assuming, one, the electricity price is the same, which again, same case in Jakarta, there's a risk where it will go down because of the new policy. And then the second thing is also it is assuming that the facility will goes 100% capacity from the start, which from other cases it shows that that is not what is happening. And actually in Putri Cempo it already runs, it already operates, and it's not exactly what is happening. It used the word progressive, and in the field, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, they are only currently running in 1 or 2 generator out of 8 generators. So that is on number 1. So this 2 trillion in reality already not achievable. And then number 2, the total outstanding loan. The facility used loan for capital injection to build the WTE, and it spends around 750 billion rupiah. Again, what needs to be noted here is that this one hasn't include the interest rate. Since we are talking about loan, there must be an interest rate, and this just assume paying the exact amount of fee. So this will most likely increase this expense. And then we can go to the next slide. Now, number 3, I'm using data from IRENA on creating the estimation for the operating expense. So we have the low and the high estimate. Long story short, if you use the high estimate, the facility will ultimately run on a negative budget. They will suffer a very high loss. Even if they are using the lowest OPEX, it will only generate 360 billion rupiah in Jakarta, and it's over the 20 years. So it's pretty small. I think I made a mistake on this 80 million EDR per year. But long story but what I'm trying to say here is that with this model and then this very low estimates, it's which low estimate is not likely to happen because this is an experimental in a sense in Indonesia where organic waste is more abundant. The lower estimate is almost not reachable. So it's hard to imagine that the lower the conservative estimate, the lower estimate of OPEX will actually happen. We can go to the next slide. And quick one on the Surakarta, it actually now struggles to operate because there are lots of things that their initial modeling did not happen in reality. So they are now using other source of waste, and then they are throwing the waste actually outside. It's because they cannot offset the actual cost that is happening in the field. And then the last one is in Bandung. This one already runs for 20 years and nothing have take place in Bandung. So 20 years of talk and not one single building because it faced lots of problems, including the financing side. I'm going to talk about the 3 financial parameters. So the first one is debt to equity ratio. Long story short, the facility is being very aggressive in terms of leveraging the loan. As we can see here, I compared the industrial benchmark and also using the study that the data provided. Long story short, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was around 70 to 30. So 70 debt and then 30 equity. It's very different. It's very significant compared to the typical industrial average. So what does this mean is that it reflects the project risk profile, which is very high, and then creates a very high risk of being default. And then we can go to the next slide. To enhance the argument, we now measure the Altman Z-score. This is mainly to, again, the same to calculate how high the probability of this project to be insolvent. It measures the profitability, leverage, liquidity, solvency, and activity. Long story short, most of the time it got the score of below 1.5, and the ideal score is 3. So it always below the half, and below the half translates to closer to bankrupt. So that's to paint the picture how risky this business is in the sense of business model. And then go to the next slide. This one is the last one. The tipping fee methodology is also not likely reflecting what will happen on the facility. So it proposed only 281,000 rupiah per tons. This is back in 2008 actually. So one might say, okay, you need to adjust to 2024 at least. But the point here is that no document that stipulated there is a guaranteed increase on the tipping fee over time. So we can also assume that that number will stay constant for the whole of its concession time. And it benchmarked to the landfill model, which is a very fatal mistake because it used a very different logical framework and also financing structure. So it translates to the second one, significant difference, which is from YPB and WALHI Jabar, two NGOs in Bandung as well that is working a lot on this issue, where they recommended 700,000. So there is at least 50% differences. This 50% differences need to be scrutinized because it means that the facility will most likely compromising on other stuffs, like for example, the compliances, the public health impact, and so on and so forth. So there is a very big trade-off here in the picture. That is basically all the financial cases. Just quick one, final remark on the final slide. So yeah, on the business side of things, WTE in Indonesia has proven itself to be not feasible with or without tipping fee model. So Surakarta is without tipping fee. If we compound this with all the time that we have spent to gain all these insights, we can easily understand that we need a better option in Indonesia. And actually those options are out there already, and it's put in the report that WALHI has created. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donny. And it was quite surprising for me to see on your slide that you said there, it's even more lucrative to become a hawker in Jakarta. And I think that really drives the point of how bad the business case is for waste to energy in those Indonesian cities. Now, before we move on to our next panelist, I'd like to remind everyone, all of our audience members, to please put in your names in the how do you say this, in that the lower right. You can or if you click on participants, you can change your names. I think there's might be some error in the naming of some participants there, and we apologize for that oversight. Please include your name and also your organization so that we can properly identify you, and then we can say hi. Now, let's move on to our next panelist. And we will actually have two panelists for the next session featuring South Korea. We introduced earlier Mr. Seungbae, former Chief Policy Officer of Mapo-gu, and accompanying Mr. Lee is Doon Moon, Policy and Research Officer of Gaia Global. Doon has been very instrumental in numerous WTE waste to energy fights in South Korea, and has also been one of the writers of several research papers involving waste to energy, chemical recycling, and other false solutions regarding waste and climate change. Over to you, Doon and Mr. Lee.
Thank you so much, Brex. Hello, everyone. So I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Seungbae Lee, who's the former Chief Policy Officer of Mapo-gu, a district in the city of Seoul. And we're gonna split the presentation into two pieces, and he will do the final closing summary remarks. As he kindly prepared script or the brief report about the situation in Mapo-gu about the anti-incineration fight, let me screen share that and give you an overview of what's going on. Allow me a minute. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, so
It's working.
let me give you an overview of what's going on in Mapo district in Seoul. So at the moment, the Mapo-gu district, Mapo-gu mayor is opposing the incinerator proposal, which is pushed by the Seoul city mayor. So you see two different levels of mayors fighting in terms of whether or not to construct a new incinerator in Mapo-gu area. And Seoul City says that it's all for having more waste management capacity in response to, for example, the landfill ban coming into effect in 2026. But the local residents are deeply concerned about this push because of health reasons, and also because it doesn't really add up when you think about when the landfill ban is coming into effect versus when the incinerator construction will be complete, which is in 2030. So it's just maybe an excuse, and the local residents have been fiercely fighting against the proposal, working with the district mayor. And so the bottom line here about why Mapo-gu opposes the incinerator proposal is that it's because local residents don't want it for health concerns. And there's a political context to be considered here, which is that traditionally Mapo-gu is pro-democratic party, whereas the Mapo-gu mayor belongs to the ruling party, the right-wing party. So he doesn't have a firm political footing in this area. So if he pushes for the incinerator proposal along with the Seoul city mayor, that means he will lose his support from the local voters, right? So he's gonna get in trouble in that way. And if he agrees with Mayor Oh, the Seoul city mayor, and build the incinerator, opposes the plan of the Seoul city mayor, which is to build the incinerator, he will get in trouble because he's basically then opposing the same party politician. So it's gonna cast a shadow in his political career path. So he's in trouble in either way. And finally, he chose to follow the lead of the local residents because then he can be remembered as a politician who stood up for the local residents. So that's what's going on. That's the backstory of why Mapo-gu is opposing the incinerator proposal. And because of this tricky situation, the Mapo-gu mayor described the announcement of the new incinerator construction plan as the political death penalty or death sentence. Yeah, you can understand the political context here. So the local residents have been fighting back against the proposal, organizing lots of public rallies and hanging banners on the street and doing press conferences. And then they are also leading with examples. So there's this zero incineration store initiative that the Mapo-gu started, which is to show that you can manage waste without incineration. So that's part of the local anti-incineration campaign. And then I wanted to highlight a recent victory of the local residents, which is to win the administrative lawsuit. It's basically a procedural misstep that the Seoul city did. So it's a non-compliance about having a certain number of committee members in the incinerator siting committee, and they neglected the requirement. So the court ruled that we should put the project on hold. So we basically bought a few years until Seoul City can proceed with the plan. But this does not mean a permanent end to the project, because Seoul City will fight back by fixing some of the procedural missteps. So that's the overview of what's going on, and what's left as ways forward would be that we need better strategies going forward. So expecting that Seoul City will continue to push for the incinerator, we need to prepare dialogues with the mayor, Seoul City mayor, Mayor Oh. So in a more cooperative way, we can initiate dialogue about how we can prove that Seoul City can manage waste without building more incinerators. So for that, we need to showcase Mapo district as the pilot zero waste district by mobilizing local residents and by showing that it's actually possible. So that's what's in the potential plan going forward. So there can be a win-win situation with the mayor because the mayor is actually one of the strong candidates for the upcoming presidential election, and he doesn't want to risk losing political support over this incinerator build-out. So we can use that political momentum to have him on our side and show him the impact of zero waste and how we can move forward without incineration. So that's basically the summary of what's going on and what's happening in the future. And I'm gonna now invite Mr. Seungbae Lee to provide a final summary.
Okay, thank you, Doug. I'll explain some more. So the Mapo incinerator case implies the clash between governmental priorities as like efficiency or cost effectiveness and local concerns as like health environment. Further complicated by political interest. Although the resident legal victory underscored that authorities must follow the law, it primarily bought time rather than compelling a full policy reversal. Moving forward, collaborative solutions are paramount. By advocating proactive waste reduction measures, residents offer a constructive path for the mayor to resolve the dispute and display for the thinking governance. Should Mapo succeed as a pilot project, its lesson could originate beyond Seoul, informing global cities grappling with similar challenges. Ultimately, sustainable urban development demands a cooperative approach, mutual respect, and a focus on future generations. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to any question or further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Dune. That was a very interesting, I believe there's a lot of very interesting insights into the different costs borne by different actors. You highlighted over there that there are some political costs and trade-offs, specifically for the mayor when it comes to deciding on the fate of this WTE proposal. And what was interesting also for me was how you highlighted costs that may be absorbed by Mapo residents, whether it's in terms of health or whether it's in terms of property prices. And lastly, what was interesting for me over there in your presentation was it seems that the cost effectiveness that Mr. Lee mentioned was really only from the perspective of the Seoul City government. So there are very interesting dynamics over there. And it's very nice to hear from a South Korean perspective. Thank you very much again, Mr. Lee and Dune. Now we will move over to our third panelist from Baguio City in the Philippines. And Miss Maria Tenafrancia, again, is the founder of Zero Waste Baguio. And recently, Baguio had a very good win where the mayor announced in a public forum that they are abandoning their WTE proposal. Now, Ms. Becky, could you shine light for us, please, on the dynamics around this decision? We understand that the Baguio City proposal considers not just Baguio City, but also neighboring municipalities. So there's sort of a clustering of different municipalities and cities in this proposal. Could you shine light on light for us on this in your presentation? Thanks so much.
Yes, Brex, thank you. Pleasant day, everyone. So anyway, let me just share a bit of a background on what Baguio City is. Kilometers but its population is about 385,000. And since it is a summer capital of the Philippines, and we have a lot of vacations and festivals, our population would sometimes balloon up to almost 1 million. And that definitely has a big bearing on the solid waste that we are generating on a daily basis. And because of that, our city government has always been thinking of um, of coming up with the waste to energy facilities in Baguio City, just to address our large our large solid waste problem. However, if you will take a look at our map, next slide, please. Anyway, there you go. So Baguio City is within what we call the BLIS, and it stands for the first letters of the municipalities surrounding Baguio City. So it's Baguio City, La Trinidad, Sablan, Itogon, Tuba, and Tublay. All of these municipalities are agricultural, and it's only Baguio that's urban. So they do not generate as much waste as Baguio does. Now, in 2015, that was the start of the thoughts of having a waste to energy facility in Baguio City. But our NGO has been very vocal in advocating against the waste to energy projects in the city. And after that, our city mayor then decided to move the project to Sablan, a nearby municipality, and says that it would be safer to bring it there to Sablan. And what we did was that we went to the place. Next slide, please. Okay, and we saw that the area that where they were supposed to build the waste to energy facility was an agricultural area, and because of that, our organization talked to the city mayor and the municipal mayor of Sablan, and it's the indigenous peoples there. Just to let you know, Baguio is within the Benguet area that has a lot of indigenous peoples. So, and next slide, please. So this happened in February last year. Okay, so there you can see the picture of the mayor, the vice mayor, and also the members of the indigenous peoples. In that forum, we explained to them the effects not only on the health, but also on the environment, and yes, of the people in Sablan. And what happened was they were saying that, yes, they really did not need any waste to energy facility because their population was really very, very small. And, you know, it's just an agricultural area. So there's not much waste to burn. It's just that they would like to accommodate the request of our city mayor. So after that, next slide, please. You might be wondering, there's another mayor there who comes from another municipality outside of the Bliss area, and that is in Nagilian and Burgos. Okay, so Burgos has been identified to be one of the areas that will be affected by the waste to energy facility. It's located near Sablan, and the source of its water is about 600 meters away from where the site of the waste to energy facility will be. That is the reason why the mayor came over during that forum. And then after that, in July, next slide, please, we invited Dr. Jorge Manuel, a scientist and an engineer from Silvan University. He's an expert on the waste to energy, on the base of the waste to energy facility. And there he explained thoroughly the different effects on waste to energy facility on the health, on the environment, and on the economy. Next slide, please. Okay, there you have it. As you can see, there were about 300 participants in that forum. There were there was the medical sector, there were the indigenous peoples, there was the youth, and other members of the different local government units coming from the different bliss areas. And from that very informative and very educational forum, that was where our mayor decided to formally abandon plans for a waste to energy facility, and that was a big success for us. But even before this happened, the Zero Waste Baguio has been very much advocating for a zero waste lifestyle through our different activities. As you will see in the next slide, we've been having several. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've been having several zero waste fairs. So this is our actually last January 26th was our 8th fair. It started in January of 2023. So we are now on our 8th fair. Been advocating for the zero waste lifestyle, wherein we do repair. We also do bokashi. We also train on bokashi composting, even on vermicomposting, and also for black soldier fly composting. We also have our collection of waste from the electrical and electronic equipment. We also have IEC materials. We even have swapping of books, of household items. And because of that, a lot of people are now doing swapping and exchange, bartering, as what we call it before, bartering of goods, of household items, and all that. Not only that, we also have been advocating for refilling stations. We have as our colleague somebody who has been selling goods by making use of refillable items, and she's been very successful with this. So apart from that, we also engage in information and education activities. We even involve the senior citizens of our city. As you can see in the next slide. Okay, we have our Golden Hands project, and this involves calling the community members, the senior citizens who were trained on how to come up with the furoshiki, wrappers for gifts, and they were also trained on how to do boro stitching, and also how to use clothes, curtains, bed sheets, and convert them into so many other, or repurpose them into so many other like decors or organizers and all that. So we involve everyone. This is very inclusive. Even the senior citizens, the PWDs, the indigenous peoples, and even the youth are involved in the projects of the Zero Waste Baguio. And then after the abandoning of the waste to energy project, it just so happened that in August, next slide please, the UNDP came to Baguio City. Oh, also this is also one of the advocacies of our government now, and it is to use the 10 R's, from starting with refuse and ending with the recover. The most advisable one would be to refuse, to rethink, and to reduce the use of our resources. That is why we have now repurposing, sharing, and repairing of our existing materials here in Baguio City. So after that, the UNDP came to Baguio City, and told us, next slide please. Okay, told us that we were part of a project and they call it the Green Economy Program of the Philippines. And this is where the circular economy has always been mentioned. So ever since August of 2024, Zero Waste Baguio and the other civil society organizations, plus the local government units, the academe, have been very active in designing several plans for 5 villages to come up with their specific activities in order for them to be able to implement a zero waste economy. Next slide, please. As we speak, there is now an ongoing the launching of our Green Circular Economy program. That the pictures here were taken this morning during the launching of the program, and until now we still have the exhibits. And this goes to show that our city has now been transitioning from a linear economy to a circular economy. So next slide, please. Because of that, we found out that, last 2023, our government spent 285 million pesos just to haul
Hello, I believe we are experiencing some technical difficulties. Miss Becky, are you there? Let's give Miss Becky a few seconds to reconnect. In about a minute or two, dear audience members, we will head into the Q&A portion. We have received some questions in the chat box. Please feel free to add a few more questions if you have any, or even any comments. Please also feel free to raise your hand if you would like to take the floor and voice out your question or your comment. Okay, I think we have lost Miss Becky due to a technical difficulty with her connection. Before we proceed to the Q&A, I'd just like to mention that it was it's very interesting case in Baguio City, where you see the different dynamics between cities and municipalities. And as she was presenting, I think it was a very good example of how a proposal could affect other cities and how other cities may not necessarily be on board with what others agree with. At this stage, we will move on to the Q&A portion. We have a few questions already. And the first one is from Dale Maree. And this question is for Donny, our speaker from WALHI in Indonesia. And she says, can you advise where the waste to energy applicants are sourcing the stock or rubbish for the plant? Donny, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Brex. So actually I already answered this through the chat, but I'll just going to echo it again. Mainly in Indonesia, the WTE project, the government warranted, is sourced from the municipality. So it covers at least the households, public facilities, and also household-like waste that is generated by business entities. So like, for example, food waste and also plastic bags, if it is generated by factory plant and so on and so forth, it still counts into it. It is supposed to be fed into the facility. That's the answer.
Thanks very much, Donny. Our second question is from, oops, not listed. Our second question is for Dune and Mr. Lee. What is the tourist profile that is sold to the South Pacific? Is there any focus on that angle or what that looks like internationally when promoting tourism for Seoul, Korea as a whole? Over to you, Dune and Mr. Lee.
Thanks, Rex. Maree? I don't think we have a good answer to that because as Mr. Lee says in the documents that Seoul City has disclosed so far, they haven't mentioned any considerations for tourism. So how the waste management policy in Seoul and tourism kind of intersect isn't really clear. So something to consider in the future. I'm sorry that we don't have a good answer for now. But I walk past the incinerator. There's an existing incinerator in Mapo-gu already, and I walk past that facility, and the smoke is visible, especially during the winter time. So I'm sure that's not doing any good for the tourism promotion. That's one thing I can say.
Thanks, Dune and Mr. Lee. Thanks also for reminding that there is actually an existing incinerator already in Mapo-gu that is showing some visible signs of pollution. We have a third question from Azme Rashidi Mohammadi. And it seems that this is in the context of New Zealand. Now, our panelist for the second panel, Councillor Dale Marie Morgan, has requested if she can answer that question during her presentation. So if it's all right, Azmi Mohammadi, if she can answer it a little bit later. All right. Are there any questions from the floor or any comments so far before we move into panel number 2?
May I just add a little bit?
Yes, Ms. Becky, welcome back.
Thank you. Yes. I'm sorry. I got cut off. Anyway, as I was saying, because of our circular economy, it is now very difficult for waste to energy projects to prosper in the city. And it is because the transition to a circular economy is aligned with global sustainability goals that will ensure more sustainable waste conscious future for Baguio City. So before, when we used to send 260 tons a day to the landfill, now we're only sending 220 tons to the landfill, and that is, that will translate to more savings and more money that will go now to social services such as housing, education, and the like. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Becky, for reminding us that there are a lot of costs when it comes to WTE. And if we redirect those resources, those funds towards other efforts like zero waste, and many of which you are already doing, you could actually have more savings, more profits, and a healthier, let's say, business case overall. Now we have a question from Arti Sachdeva. I think Arti would like to take the floor. Arti, floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Brex. Actually, my question is that if anybody has done any research on the financial implications of setting up WTE vis-a-vis decentralized waste processing units, especially considering that most of the local bodies at the governments are incentivizing WTE plants. So what is the cost incurred at the government level if they spend on WTE, not just on the capex, but also in the purchase buyback agreements on the electricity, which is usually at a higher level than the other fossil-based energy, as well as if they spend the similar, or if they spend some amount on the decentralized waste processing units, which are doing processing the waste in a very environment friendly manner, and maybe through composting, biomethanation, recycling, etc. So is there any such case studies or research available from anywhere? That would be really great to understand.
So if I understood correctly, Arti, your question pertains to costs borne by the local governments.
Correct.
Yes, if they take those.
Yeah, because that would give us a business case, that way we can convince the local bodies that in case if you spend on, say, a decentralized unit vis-a-vis if you invest in a WTE, what is the kind of cost now, like the capex, as well as going forward, what kind of implications does it present?
Thanks, Arti. I wonder if any of the panelists would like to take the question. Doon, I see you raise your hand.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I just wanted to quickly mention that the recent closer cases from the US include a lot of struggles around having to pay for the upgrade needs. So they end up having not sufficient funds for the expensive upgrades because the lifespan of the incinerator is only like 20 to 30 years. And as they age, we need to keep constantly fixing the facility units, and it costs too much money, and it's not approved by the city council because it means taxpayers' burden. So in that way, a lot of facilities have been closed in the States, at least. So I can find some sources around that, and I'm sure this happens in other countries as well.
Thank you very much, Doon. That would be very helpful. Even I believe even the operational cost, because as we were talking about the tipping fees, which the local bodies, they pay to the to the WTE to transport the waste from the city and to the plant, which is usually located at the outskirts or far away from the urban areas. So I'm sure the cost incurred by the ULB would also be higher as compared to what the decentralized facility has. So there are many aspects, many layers of the cost that is incurred. And if we could collate it together in the form of a case study, I think that would be very helpful.
Thanks, Doon. Ms. Becky?
Yes, and if I may add, there's one thing that we learned during our forum. There's such a thing as cost for monitoring, and it really costs a lot. Because if you want to make sure that the emissions are not as dangerous, then you would have to do like daily, or not only daily, several hours of the day, you would have to monitor the emissions that would come out from the waste to energy facility, and that is very, very costly. That's according to our speaker during our forum, Dr. Ore Manuel.
Thanks so much, Ms. Becky. Now, we have 2 more quick questions. And one of our audience members actually reminds us of the presence of and the activeness of indigenous peoples in the Philippine context, particularly in Baguio City. I'm wondering, Ms. Becky, if you could elaborate for us some of the ways in which the indigenous peoples have participated in some of your activities? How might they view the WTE proposal over there?
As I mentioned, Baguio City and even its surrounding municipalities have a lot of indigenous peoples, and we also have a law that says that all of the government units must have indigenous peoples representatives in the local council. So the concerns of the indigenous people, especially on the environment, because they really know that we are stewards of the environment, and they take it in heart to really take care of the environment. So because of this, they are very active in advocating for coming up with environmentally safe initiatives, not only in waste to energy, but in solid waste management, but also for other protection initiatives, like for water, for air, and all that. In Sablan, where the facility was supposed to be put up, the indigenous peoples there were very active and they're very influential, and that is the reason why even their mayor and their vice mayor said that we cannot have the waste to energy facility here, because the people, even their products, they have they have agricultural products such as vegetables, fruits, and rice would be affected, and in a way it will redound to the lowering of their economic status. So they're very much active, when it comes to policy making also. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Becky. Now, our last question, just very quickly, I will direct this towards either Dune or Donny. And this pertains to international financial institutions. The question is asking, have you discovered that international financial organizations like the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank have a part in lending money to WTE initiatives? Donny, maybe to you or Dune?
Yeah, I can go first on that. So in Indonesia's case, first off, from the strategic roadmap, yes, ADB already took part on that side. So I think it was somewhere around after the landfill tragedy back in 2005. The ADB already take part and then create some recommendations that WTE should be part of the new integrated waste management system in Indonesia. And then after that, in each project, it becomes pretty unique. Like, for example, in Jakarta, we have IFC that is involved in the financing, although it's not there yet, but I mean, IFC was there mentioned in their project. And then we also have Surakarta, if I'm not mistaken, it was from China Construction Bank, CCB. And then I think also Surabaya got their lending from a international financing institution. So yes, in Indonesia, IFI really present themselves from the strategic level down until the financing for the infrastructure construction level.
Yeah, let me add that international development has been used as a tool to export waste to energy technology to overseas, especially from countries like Japan and Korea, and multilateral investment banks such as Asia Development Bank and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. They have been investing in waste to energy projects, and especially in the name of climate-friendly projects. So I know that Gaia has been leading lots of campaigns debunking that, and Brex has been part of it. Mayang has been leading it. So there have been some reports coming out of the campaign, and we're gonna do more this year as well.
Thanks so much, Donny and Dune. And just to remind also as well, as it's there in the chat, there's a link to the publication of case studies by WALHI. And I believe there are some mentions over there of how international financial institutions are supporting WTE initiatives either through direct funding or even through things like feasibility studies or capacity building initiatives. We'd like to thank everyone from our first panel again for sharing their perspectives, their thoughts, and really shining light on a lot of the economic costs, different kinds of costs, and the different dynamics and situations over there in Indonesia, in South Korea, and the Philippines. Thank you again, Mr. Donny Julius Christian, Mr. Seungbae Lee, Ms. Dun Moon, and Ms. Becky Tenafrancia. Now, before we move on to panel number 2, where we will feature voices from India, New Zealand, and Bangladesh, we'd like to request everyone for a quick picture. So if you can open your camera just for a little bit, we'd like to take some screenshots for a minute or so. All right. Who's in charge of the screenshots? Is it Bernadette or Robbie? Please let us know. Give us a 1, 2, 3.
Robbie, can you do the screenshot, please?
Hi everyone.
Okay.
So this is for all of our panelists. Yeah, I will just do a quick countdown and take the photo.
All right.
Okay. Thanks everyone. In 3, 2, 1. And another set for backup. In 3, 2, 1. Thanks everyone.
All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks again, Donny, Dun, Mr. Lee, and Miss Becky. Now we move on to panel number 2, where we continue to explore this question of different costs when it comes to WTE incineration adoption. Our first panelist for panel number 2 is coming from India, Mr. Chythenyen Devika Kulasekaran, representing the Center for Financial Accountability, which is an organization that's been actively campaigning for accountability among national and international financial institutions. They've done a number of amazing research, which are available online for everyone's pleasure and benefit. And today, Chythenyen, you talked about your recent research focuses on different parameters on analyzing financial issues when it comes to WTE take-up. And in particular, you focused recently on 4 major WTE companies that are active in India. Could you elaborate for us what are the different findings you've had? What are these parameters that you've been analyzing when it comes to these financial issues, and what are the outcomes of your research? Over to you, Chythenyen.
Thanks, Brex, for the introduction, and thank you, Gaia, for this opportunity. I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible, Brex?
Yes, it is.
Thanks. So I want to start by saying that there is a lot of cash in the trash. What we found out was that India has about 5,000 urban local bodies, and once we add the solid waste management budget of these urban local bodies, we found that the budgets of the solid waste management for these urban local bodies is 2.5 times the defense budget of the country. So the defense budget of India is about 5,25,000 crores. So what we are looking at is a 2.5 times bigger money than that. We also had the task force for waste to energy, which has recommended building 500 plus incineration plants across the country to burn about 2,22,000 tons of garbage every single day. And this task force had also proposed a lot of subsidies in terms of providing viability gap funding for building these plants, the capital expenditure up to 50%, interest-free loans, providing tipping fees, beneficial electricity prices, tax exemptions, and free land. And most of these recommendations have been implemented today. And this market, according to the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, is set to grow at about 20% on a year-on-year basis. So there is a lot of money that is being pumped into this technology. So we wanted to do an analysis of the major waste to energy companies in India, especially because their environmental health and livelihood impacts have been well documented. So the pollution aspect has been well documented, but we also wanted to analyze how they are doing financially. So the first waste to energy plant in India, the commercial waste to energy plant in India, was built in 2012 in this place called Okhla in Delhi. So Okhla is this place which was in the news recently because of the New York Times investigation that revealed how this particular plant impacted the lives of 1 million people and how it was, spewing emissions about 19 times the prescribed limits, the heavy metals. So we looked at this company which owns Okhla Waste Energy Plant, the Jindal Urban Infrastructure Limited, owned by the Jindal Group. So it is the largest waste to energy company in the country. We also looked at Resustainability Limited, which is a part of the Ramki Group. So the Ramki Group is Asia's largest waste management company. It looks at it has operations in biomedical waste, waste collection, and various other things. We looked at SL and this company called Abalone. So together, these four companies manage more than 75% of India's waste to energy plants. So when we analyzed the financials, we looked at the financials from the year 2019 to 2023. We looked at various parameters like profit after tax, the gross margin, things like that. I will go a little bit into details in the next slide about what we did.
Excuse me, Chythenyen. I think the screen is frozen from my end. It only shows the title screen.
Is it visible now?
Not from me yet. Yeah, I'm wondering, Faye. Yeah. I'm wondering, Faye, if it was visible for you. It only showed the title screen for me.
Yes, it did show just the title screen.
Okay. Oh. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
you
now
go.
it's moving. Yeah, okay.
Okay, sorry. So, so the Indian waste to energy companies also get a lot of revenue from the sale of carbon credits, the sale of recyclables. So recyclables could be very less. For example, the Okhla waste energy plant burnt about 6 lakh tons of garbage in the financial year 2023-24. And yet the recyclables that they recovered was just like 700 tons. So essentially they burned 99.9% of the garbage. So the sale of electricity, the electricity that is sold by these plants is the costliest in the country at about 7.5 rupees, Indian rupees per unit. They also make a lot of money by selling what is called as plastic credits. In India, it is called as EPR credits. So the 4 waste to energy plants in Delhi cumulatively burnt about 7,35,000 tons of plastics during the period 2022-2023. And they made about 120 crores from the sale of these plastic credits. On top of that, they get something called as the aggregate processing fees. So this is the fees that is paid by the urban local body to the plant operator. So the waste comes to their doorstep, the doorstep of the waste to energy plant. So the waste to energy plant picks it up, burns it, and then the bottom ash, the fly ash, the hazardous ash is then again managed by the urban local body. So to do that, they are getting around 2,500 Indian rupees per ton. So on top of, so despite having a wide source of revenue from different items, this is what we found. So we found that these companies are loss-making enterprises. So we looked at what is called as profit after tax, the money that the company makes after paying the taxes to the government. For Jindal, it was a loss of 56 crores. For SL, it was a loss of 140 crores, and the company has filed for bankruptcy. Ramki's profit declined from 146 crores in 2019 to about 83 crores in 2023. And Abalone was staring at a loss of 19 crores. So basically, all the companies were making losses, or their profits were decreasing. So the operational profitability was very poor. So the net worth of the company, we looked at the net worth of these companies, and we found that the net worth of these companies had decreased except for Ramki. So I will also share in detail about Ramki and why Ramki stands out to be an exception. Inability to meet long-term debt obligations. So we looked at something called as days receivable outstanding. That is the money, the time that a company takes to get its money from its customer. To put it in simple terms, it took 101 days for Jindal to get its money from the customer, which is the government. For Abalone, it took close to 9 months. So it was taking a lot of time for the companies to get this money. And the interest coverage ratio was also very less. And for Abalone, it was minus 14.1, which means the ability of the company to pay the interest on its debts. We looked at the profitability ratio. It was negative for all the companies except Ramki, and inability to fulfill short-term debt obligations. So this is again, we looked at something called as the quick ratio. These are technical terms, but to put it in simple terms, it is the liquid money that the company has to pay back its short-term loan obligations. So we found that it was less than the average. So the quick ratio should be 1. For Jindal, it was a 0.5. That's less than half. And for Abalone, it was just 0.05. It was in a very, very bad shape. We also saw that the companies were borrowing more money to finance their operations. So for Jindal, it was an increase of 53%. For Abalone, it was an increase of 65%. So basically, these companies were running with a lot of loans that they have obtained. And Power Finance Corporation was the biggest lender for the waste to energy plants in India. It's a public institution. It has lent about 2,250 crores to several waste to energy plants. So I will also quickly talk about this company called Abalone. So Abalone is a company which is building 4 waste to energy plants in Gujarat. And we had joined hands with the communities and organizations, International Accountability Project, Gaia, BFFP, and various other organizations to write to the IFC. So they had sought a loan of about 40 million USD from the IFC, which is the private lending arm of the World Bank. So we had written a letter highlighting the issues, the environmental issues, the health issues because of these plants, and also how poor it is financially. We have been able to postpone the board meeting on this particular project several times, but we are yet to hear a final result on this particular campaign. So what major finding, one of the major finding is that, of course, these companies are loss making, but with respect to Ramki, we found that they are slightly better than the other companies. because they are doing an end-to-end service of waste management, right from waste collection to transportation, managing the waste to energy plants, and also disposal of the toxic hazardous waste. So what we are staring at today is an end-to-end capture of the waste management system by these corporate companies. So this leaves the entire ecosystem in a very dangerous state. We have the waste pickers, we have the waste collectors, aggregators, sorters, shredders, recyclers. So all their livelihoods is impacted. And these contracts are drawn in such a way that, it excludes all the other people, the waste management ecosystem. So this is one frightening thing that we found out from our analysis. And also to get these projects, these are high value projects. For example, in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, India, we found that, companies are often, forming a cartel to bag these projects. These companies talk among each other, and, there is one.
Thanks so much, Chythenyen, for giving all those very, very comprehensive details into how these companies are losing money and operating on losses, essentially. Thank you also for highlighting the costs when it comes to the livelihoods of the waste workers, recyclers, sorters, who are part of the existing waste ecosystem there in India. Our next speaker will move on to New Zealand. And for New Zealand, we have Councillor Dale Marie Morgan, who is a member of the Waipā District Council. And Councillor Dale, we'd like to ask you, as an elected representative of an Indigenous community, what impacts would a WTE plant have on the Indigenous people and major industries in the Waipā district and in New Zealand more broadly? Over to you.
Tēnā koe Brex, i te tuatahi. He mihi ka tika ki a koutou nā raurangatira i tai mai nei ki tēnei huihui. Mena kai kite i tēnei hui. So just quickly, just acknowledging everybody and the speakers that have come before me, and also the viewers that are joining us tonight today, but tonight for those of us in Aotearoa, and who are beamed in for this presentation. So yeah, if we can just go to the next slide. My presentation will be in 4 components. And as you can see, that's them there, but I will put the disclaimer down that this is, the content in this presentation is my personal opinion, but I will share how within local government, how the waste energy project impacts at the different levels and in the questions that I was asked. So yeah, there's 4 parts, and if we can have the next slide, thanks. So to bring context to some of my presentation tonight, I introduce myself and show you how the Indigenous are intrinsically connected to the land and the resources of the land, pretty much the environment. And if you have a look in the chat, I'm going to share some of the notes that are from my presentation to help people with knowing some of the terminology that I'll use tonight in the presentation. So just quickly, just to let you know that there were people that were already in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but closer around the 1100s, we have some history that shows us our migration, that there was a bit of a mass migration that came here around that time. And in one part of me, I came on a canoe, a double hull canoe called Tainui. And as you'll see there, I come from the Tainui Waka. I come from 4 mountains, which is Maunga Tautari, Panihakua and Wharepuhunga. I come from 3 tribal groupings, Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Maniapoto, and the Waikato Iwi. They're a collective. And Parawera is my place of standing. So that's a marae and a place that my people gather at. And for 26 generations, my people have been on this land and have had relationships with its functions, and we've always worked in harmony with those functions between the Sky Father and the Earth Mother. So for some of you that might pick up in this, I'm not a Christian, and I'm actually, when we talk about Indigenous, I've reverted back to my Indigenous gods. And I'll talk more about that because of how the relevance it is to my presentation, and I'm pretty sure that many of the Indigenous peoples in this presentation can relate in some kind of way around some of the, and I think the European word for it is demigods, and their functions and how their functions used to inform Indigenous peoples and how they would synchronize with the environment. So yeah, that's and as you can see, that's one part of my Māori side, my Indigenous side, but you'll also see my European side as well, and that's my great-grandfather, William Treglow Thomas, and his family that are on his bigger family on the right-hand side. So if we go to the next slide, please. There's some context there that makes relevance to the presentation as well, and why I put that there is so that people can understand that there's actually supposed to be a co-governance arrangement, and that's how we're supposed to govern here in New Zealand. And traditionally, what's happened is we haven't had the honouring of our partners that we entered into a treaty in 1840 with, and that treaty actually constitutionalised everybody else being able to be here and reside in those lands. And unfortunately, we have, for over 100 years, only taught about the dominant culture and not the Indigenous culture to fully understand how we could complement each other in this country in a dual way of living and supporting each other so that we can coexist well as peoples and as how we live with our environment for the future and for now and for those that will reside in it mo ake tonu atu forever and a day. So in saying that, we as the Indigenous have this intrinsic connection to our lands and our environment here, which we try to use mechanisms within our Indigenous knowledge that will inform better practices, because as I lead into the next slide, please, you'll see the area that as an elected member, I am part, you'll see in the red in the map there, that is the area that is the district that I am an elected member for. That's the population data of my district that I'm an elected member for. But I'll be really brutally honest, the 20.8% are the ones that have the stronghold on advocacy for the environment in our area. And that is something that is really traditional. Indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, have always been at the forefront of advocacy for our environment. And so that works with the basis of how we live with our demigods and how we synchronize in harmony with the environment. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to move to colonial waste because what I've heard with the other speakers before me, I haven't quite heard anything what I'm going to go into from any other speaker at this stage. And as you'll read there, you'll get the theme of where I'm going with this. And for us, and it's broken down pretty well. I've got an uncle who I do water monitoring with in streams and lakes, and he's pretty succinct and simple in what he says. And pretty much for him, when he looks at a stream and he sees no insects, he just looks at me and he says, it's sick, and we will be sick. Because we source from that place, we source our food and we source water from there. If that is sick, then we are sick. And it's as simple as that for him. He doesn't have any other, and for me, I take that on because people like him and the 26 generations of us that have lived on this land, we've learned that if we are not listening and looking at those indicators of our land and our resources, then we're actually doing our own disjustice by what we're putting into ourselves, into our bodies and what we're ingesting. So I take on what my uncle has said because he's the one that's actually looked after our rivers and our streams and the life that lives in there, and that's the tuna, the freshwater eels, which are a big source of what we still eat. So for many of us Indigenous peoples, we still source from our nature. We don't always eat from the processed food at supermarkets. We're still trying to maintain our traditions of being able to gather kai in our traditional ways and in our traditional spaces that we've always known. So waste to energy doesn't fit our makeup, and I'll go into more into that, and I'll tell you a little bit why I say that it doesn't fit how we do with colonial structures. So if we can go to the next slide, please. The context of our political structure has always been constructed without Indigenous. So most of our, and I want to say globally, most of our waste management frameworks and systems and processes that we have don't include Indigenous ways of doing things. And I suppose for a lot of us generationally, we're probably going to think, oh my gosh, what did we do? As Indigenous peoples prior to, for us, colonisation, and where a lot of waste was then introduced. Because as you can appreciate, prior to Captain Cook got here, we weren't sick. We didn't have any diseases. We didn't have alcohol. We didn't have cigarettes. We didn't have any of that kind of colonial waste that has come for our bodies, as well as what is coming for our physical environment. So for me, that's the kind of thing that started colonial waste and its genealogy, its links, its DNA. And as you'll see on that slide, I've kind of broken that word a little bit as something that, because as we know, at the colon is where all our waste goes. And yeah, that's why I call it the colonial waste, because it's not Indigenous waste. And when you've had such a dependency on the petrochemical industry, that's not Indigenous peoples either, but it usually is Indigenous resources that are used to boost the petrochemical industry. So in saying that, we here in Aotearoa have joint management authority, co-governance examples, and that's come through the redress of all the stolen land that's gone on over the last 100 or so years that's helped form our political landscape and our political governance. So some of the things that I'm going to share with you are some of the positives that we have, and I want to say the positives that we have are really great community initiatives, and I really want to take my hat off to people like Maree, who are working from that that community level and still informing at a policy level as well. So because it is the community, as we know, in resistance and everything like that, it is the community that are the biggest advocates. And I'll be brutally honest, I only stood for local government on this subject. I had no idea about local government. I was into Indigenous development, not waste minimisation like this. And in the last year and a half in local government, I've learned more than my $30,000 degree I did in the early 2000s. But it's a, you know, it's a vital thing. So we have some initiatives here called Extreme Waste, where they've diverted 14,000, nearly 15,000 cubic meters and put back 1.5 million this year alone. So over 24 years, they've diverted 340,000 cubic meters of waste and given back 35 million into their community. Employing 35 people, it's a no-brainer. So some of the, next slide please, some of the political economic losses, I want to go to the next section of my presentation. As you can see there, that's where our plant is due to be, right next to a huge industry provider in our area, and you can see how much that would affect that clean green image of New Zealand. And when we're talking about Fonterra, who is our dairy co-op, you know, they've just spent they've spent 11 million in getting going from coal to a good emissions network. They're not going to want this thing either, a waste to energy plant. And 400 and I think it's 93 farms are depending on a $75,000 payout this year. That's how bad this waste to energy plant can affect profit. So for me, as someone who's going to say to policy makers and analysts and things like that, loss of employment, local farm losses, and also, like I said to Doon and a couple of others, exercise your tourism profile, because this does not fit New Zealand's clean green image. Can I go to the next slide, please? Sorry, I know I'm running out of time. In conclusion, as you can read there on that slide, I can tell you that, you know, New Zealand is probably creating the 6th gyre, and pretty fast, in the South Pacific, and that is a plastic pollution funnel that's going to Easter Island at the moment. And I know that we can do better than this. We can always do better than this. And I think Indigenous peoples are at the forefront of knowing how to do better, because they've never had the chance. And I just want to acknowledge in the last of my presentation is the fantastic group, Don't Burn Waipā. They were made out of being part of a forum that we have here, and I was only joined that due to another great group of advocacy who actually got their plant shut down, which is fielding against incineration, and the great people from down there. I'd also like to pay homage to, there's a group, sorry, I just have to find their names, shucks. And you'll find, I'll give you their paper, because their paper is just crucial, I think, for some of you to use around some of the data. Ari, I think that's something that you were asking for earlier in the presentation, but I'll just pop this. I want to pay homage to these people because they were the ones that put a lot of the data together that I'm putting in here. That's an amazing paper for people to read. And I want to take my hat off to the organisers in this group, also to people like Angeline Greensill, Mike Smith, who's currently taking our government to court on climate action, and everybody that's involved here today. Kia kaha everyone, we got this. Kia ora.
Thanks so much, Councillor Dale. It's quite refreshing actually to hear an Indigenous perspective when it comes to waste to energy, when it comes to waste colonialism. And just like to give that bit of appreciation because we don't normally hear that in our circles. So thank you for reminding us of all of those. I'd just like to share on the chat some of the things that were sent. I think it was sent directly to me. So, or maybe you could do it. Yeah, maybe you could do it. Okay, just resending everything. All right. Thank you for sending those links on the chat. And we will now move on to our final panelist, who is from Bangladesh. And we have with us Maksud, who is the Executive Director of Grambangla Unnayan Committee, which is doing a lot of great work working with the poor and children in Bangladesh. Now, we did have some discussions recently, Maksud, about how you were also been working with waste workers and others involved in the waste ecosystem. Now, our question to you is, we would like to find out more about the context over there in Bangladesh. And could you explain to us what would be the economic losses for local governments when they approve a WTE project over there? And finally, who exactly pays for these losses? We've heard recently how there are numerous losses from India, from Indonesia. How about there in Bangladesh? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Brex. Yes, in Bangladesh, most recently, government has started a waste to energy project, and that project will continue to function since 2026, and it is under process of construction. And because of this, especially the waste picker community in Bangladesh and the other waste workers, you know, the recycling shop owners and the forward linkage and backward linkage industry showed their great concern of this project. First of all, the loss is the material loss. Those will be burned in the waste to energy project. It is a waste to energy project of Bangladesh with the Dhaka North City Corporation. It will have a capacity of 42 megawatt, and you know, it will have an investment of $481 million and a new, you know, a bank that is called the New Development Bank will fund it for it, and ADB list shows that project as a proposed project. And we, though the local government or government did not do any, you know, economic assessment or environmental assessment of this project, but we did some primary assessment based on our, you know, primary initiative. That shows that if this waste to energy project consumes 3,000 metric ton of waste per day, and within this waste, the content, 30% content is recyclable. And if we calculate the whole year's, you know, supply, only especially the plastic and other recyclable material value is about $33 million per year. And, you know, in the Dhaka North City Corporation area, near about 100,000 people's livelihood is associated with this project. More or less, each of the person earn at least 10,000 taka locally, that is $100 per month. And if we calculate the loss of their livelihood, because they lose their livelihood if the material is burnt, Then we estimated that 120 million US dollar per year will be lost directly from the livelihood loss of these poor people, you know. And apart from it, certainly associated with this recycling industry, there are many shops, many recycling industry, and city corporation are, you know, trade license fees, tax, VAT from these eco enterprises. And if they disappear, then the revenue as taxes and trade license fees will disappear certainly, and the loss will be on the city corporation. And we have views concern, like in Delhi, you know, our water quality is also bad. Recently, we noticed that in some other South Asian cities have very bad water quality. And because of that, the lung disease and other diseases burden is so huge. And the burden bears the poor people, you know, the citizens of the local government and the local hospital. So this cost will be huge and it needs to be estimated. And certainly, if all the materials is burnt, you know, then, for example, waste pickers collect food waste and bone waste from the, they recover it from the waste dump site. And they recycle it and send it to the, you know, poultry feed industry, cattle feed industry, and for example, there are plastic industry, there are coir, coconut coir industry, you know, from those coir, you know, buttons are made, you know, and some other valuable materials are made. So with this waste, there are many forward linkage industry, backward linkage industry. So all this industry will be destroyed, you know, and associated with this industry, a lot of, you know, livelihoods will be lost. And certainly it will have impact, you know, negative impact on our national income. And if we see another thing, that is, you know, a greenhouse gas emission. Since I am considering the one case study, that is waste to energy project of Dhaka North City Corporation. So over 25 years, this plant will emit 8.3 million ton of greenhouse gases. And there is a recent, you know, journal, you know, article on Nature, the globally reputed journal, and it says that per ton, you know, greenhouse gas impact has impact on the society. It is 185 US dollar, you know, per ton. Then for 8.3 million, it will be 1.5 billion over 5, you know, year of, you know, production. So you see a huge loss, you know, not only on the local government, on the citizens of the local people, or even globally. And another very important issue, that is our government produce electricity for, you know, 12 taka per unit, that is $0.1, the local average production cost. Purchase electricity from those plant for double. So it's so we calculated.
Maksud, excuse me, you're using it. I think you're on mute.
Connected, you know. So my last word is, can you hear me, Brex? Yeah. So
yes,
the total loss of material, loss of income of waste picker, recycle worker, businessman, industry, and you know, loss of air quality associated economic burden on the local government and its people. The collective cost is very high. Then the gain from the electricity is generated from the waste to energy project. So this project is complete loss and complete disaster, not only for our local government, also nationally and internationally also, if we consider the greenhouse gas issues also. Thank you, Brex.
Thank you very much, Maksud. I think that actually, how do you say this, weaves together quite well all the different kinds of losses that we've been talking about throughout this webinar. You mentioned material losses, livelihood losses. I very much appreciate that you mentioned also loss of good air quality because of the GHG emissions, and overall how all of these put together, it really results in significant losses in millions and millions of dollars on national income. Now, we have finished our panels, and now we will head on over to our final Q&A portion. Let me check if there are any questions in the chat box. Would just like to note that Asme Rashidi Mohammadi sent some good words directed to Councillor Dale about the presentation about waste colonialism. It's a very interesting comment saying how what we might call waste is often seen as a surplus, something that can be repurposed or reintegrated into the natural cycle. And I think that that really puts to light a lot of the value that we can still get from waste and what might be lost if we burn those. Are there any comments from the chat or from the Facebook feed? Faye, Robbie, Bernadette. Okay. I guess while our audience members might still be thinking of a question, Maksud, I'd actually have a question for you. You noted earlier that, if I heard correctly, the Dhaka North WTE proposal is supported by ADB. Did I hear that correctly? What type, and if yes, what type of support is ADB giving? You are on mute.
Yeah, a new development bank has already given $100 million. And ADB have listed this project, and it is within the arrangement of the ADB also.
Thanks so much. So that is both. That is in a sense, both banks are supporting. It's a joint project. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Brex, am I able just to mention a couple of things?
Oh, yes. Yes, please.
And this is something that I'm probably going to put globally at the moment, is that there's a real massive shift, and I think I picked it up in Dawn's presentation earlier today, around the outright and the systemic corruptive ways of moving with these waste to energy plants that are trying to pop up. Because some of the stuff that we've got going on in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is we currently have a minister in government who wants to control regulation. And any regulatory processes by being dealt with by one person who doesn't care about indigeneity, doesn't care about the environment, we know is going to have huge detrimental effects to the environment in a regulatory space. Now, this is the same guy who also tried the same stuff for the Atlas network up in Canada. And I'm sure there's a few of us in this forum and in this meeting tonight that know about the Atlas network and how they've deliberately secured water and water aquifers across the world. And, you know, many of us at a local council level 10 to 15 years ago apparently had no idea of what these long-term leases or these long-term agreements we were having with a lot of these aquifer sources. And Nestle and companies like that are all buying into this waste to energy space because they know, one, they can get rid of their corporate rubbish, and two, there is that stronghold by a few in this world to control all the assets and natural assets and resources. I mean, it doesn't take any rocket scientists to figure out that Africa's full of all the, you know, of resources, and yet where are their people when it comes to being rich? Many of us as nations in this meeting tonight know we come from very rich mineral based countries, but the indigenous people aren't always the ones that are benefiting or at least getting the profits from their own minerals that are extracted. So yeah, just a heads up on that space. With our regulation minister is also trying to get rid of all indigenous people's rights within every aspect of our government policy at the moment, so he can go hammer and shot. Oh, we've got a stupid minister who's just opened us all up for mining. He's an idiot. So yeah.
Thanks again, Councillor Dale. I think your comment does really shine light on how, you know, when it comes to issues like this, it's not just a matter of an incinerator. It also relates to other contentious topics, mining. You mentioned the aquifers, and of course, exclusion. I think of the people who are affected, and might I say, who already do have solutions already in place. Now, I think we have one question from the chat over there, from Malaysia, our friend Carl Ngo from Batu Arang, Malaysia. And Carl asks, is in an attempt to educate residents in my town in Batu Arang, the protest against incinerators, what instruments can you recommend for measuring air quality? We have been protesting over the last 2 years. Would any of the panelists, if either from panel 1 or from panel 2, would anyone have an answer to this, or I could take it if not? All right, just to mention very quickly there, Carl, that I think we can correspond by email, but we are hearing you, and in terms of measuring air quality, one of the things that we have also been involved with in Gaia is a lot of citizen science when it comes to measuring air quality. We actually have a project right now where I've been asking community members to, or we have been working with community members and also experts, air quality experts, on measuring air quality around some incinerators in Asia Pacific. So there will be more updates on that very soon in the next few months. But I hope to correspond with you via email so we can have a more focused discussion. We also have another question from John Russell Hodge, and John asks, I think this might be for Councillor Dale, if there is a logic to WTE plants, it is to have them near the source of the waste being generated. I'm South Island of NZ. There is a proposal to have a new plant halfway between 2 population centers, both over 200,000 200 kilometers away, thus incurring huge transportation and storage costs to keep the furnaces going. Is anyone aware of a plant that has a business model based on remote processing in this way?
I don't think that is a question for me, actually, Brix. I think that's for the rest of the global community. Yeah.
Yeah, it is from New Zealand, but anyone would like, any of the panelists would like to answer?
I think only, and I'll just respond to John, knowing that that the Waipā group is a big resistance and advocacy group down there at the moment, trying to resist. Is it a 400 million plant? I think John is what's destined, is what is proposed for Waipā in the South Island, and it's absolutely ridiculous where they want to put this one in the South Island when it's around intense farming as well. So I only hope that the dairy industry will also step up and support the resistance to the Waipā plant. Unfortunately, and apologies to any of our viewers or attendees that might be from Malaysia, but it is Malaysian backing that we are fighting at the moment. We do understand that it is that Malaysia will also look at funding any appeals to any plants that are rejected by our processes that we have here in New Zealand. The current campaign that I stood for, we're about to have a board of inquiry process that will decide whether our plant goes ahead. I was only lucky that we have a great resistance movement that's been immobilised now. Don't Burn Waipā, 872 people in the community submitted, which is one of the biggest submission processes we've ever had. When you focus on things of saying to people personally, the emissions and its dropout, as we know, most of the applications are based on a sunny day. They do all their assessments. Well, you add wind, water, or anything else in the atmospheric conditions will turn that toxic emission into some other toxic emission. Once that lands on gardens, then you're gonna ingest it. So one way that we've focused is people won't be able to grow gardens. When you tell people they can't do something, human nature doesn't like that. So they'll spin around and they'll be like, oh, what? Oh, is that good for me then that I'm not able to make that choice? So around COVID, we had a lot of misinformation, and we had a lot of people that believed that choice was being taken away from them. So we have this, I want to say, post-COVID hangover on that. And so whenever you tell people that they won't have a choice, it's like it does the opposite effect, and they'll jump in. And I'm really honoured that there's Angela Baker's in this attending, and I see that she's also just put in the comments. She was one of the hardest advocates, along with Alida Kumene, who was behind the fielding against incineration that did get stopped. But in saying that, here comes the corruption part. We also know that fielding got stopped a few years ago, but then with this new government we've got, they're now going to look at applications that were not approved even up till 10 years ago, and now they're putting them in a fast track process to be re-examined again. So, we got corruption all over the place. It might look like small scale over here, but we all know where the tentacles reach and connect globally.
Thanks, Councillor Dale. And one last thing on John's question. I think Donny is typing an answer over there. I don't know if Donny wants to share just for a few seconds. We're running out of time. Or
Yeah, I think I'll just go over the mic instead. And sorry that I will not turn on the camera. Just a quick one. Actually, I'm also only sharing that in Indonesia, WTE is built actually to answer that very issue. We do not want to have a facility that is way too far from the city. So instead of increasing the transportation costs. We did it in order to reduce the transportation costs. So to answer that, at least in Indonesia, we do not have the case of being remote, but in the sense of advocacy, I think it's a very strong case. If the community have to not only pay for the processing fee at the WTE, but also have to bear the burden of the cost of transporting the waste into a very remote area. So in the sense of advocacy stuff, I see that as a very good point to fight against the construction of WTE.
Thanks so much, Donny. And one last point on that one, I think in terms of transportation, especially in farther distances, you also increase, I guess, risk. Once that is being transported, there might be some risk along the way. Who knows, maybe the waste gets spilled over somewhere. And that's another cost that you might have to deal with. Those are some concerns that we're dealing with in places like the Marshall Islands. Now, I think we end over there, or rather the Maldives, sorry, not Marshall Islands. I think we end over there. Thank you all to everyone. I think we'll just have one very quick picture with all the panelists for panel number 2, Maksud, Councillor Dale, and Chythenyen, and then we'll wrap things up here. Is Chythenyen? Okay, there. All right. Who's taking the picture? Bernadette, please let us know.
Hello.
Robbie?
Yes,
Robbie,
I
okay.
can also take photo again for only for the panelists.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. I will do a quick countdown in 3. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more for backup. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks again, Maksud, Chythenyen, and Councillor Dale Maree. This has been absolutely fantastic. We have a whole lot of material that we can work with here. I hope this help inform everyone about the different costs related to WTE adoption. We'll be posting some links, and I believe a recording of this webinar to all the people who registered by email. You may also review this webinar on our Facebook page, Zero Waste Asia. There is a live stream going on. Thank you again to everyone. And there are also some call to action links over there that we'll be sharing by email, such as in New Zealand, the incinerator proposal that they're fighting over there, Councillor Dale and others. It's an ongoing battle. And I'm not sure if they're still receiving comments, but any help would be very much appreciated. Thanks everyone again. Have a good day.